Hello guys, welcome to Daddy Share Space and welcome back to another episode of Telly Talks Tech. So I want to pick up where I left off before, and I believe that was with Windows 10. So I had progressed originally, just a short recap, I progressed from the Apple ecosystem. Moving on from the Apple ecosystem, I moved into the Android where I was using the Motorola Atrix, and then from there, when that phone went by the wayside, I picked up the Lumia 920, which was a Windows phone, and that Windows phone had the operating system of Windows 8 on it. And then not long after Windows 8, with Windows 8 RT and all of that stuff, Microsoft started to pivot and started to talk about the Universal Windows Platform, which was all about Windows 10. And Windows 10 was supposed to be allegedly running on all kinds of devices. And so just going back, Windows 10 came out in July 2015. Now, the significance of this is, and this is going to be kind of rolling into what I mean by how I feel like when I say that what I think Microsoft should have done, and we'll eventually get to today and how things actually are. So right here, I can't, for some reason, I misplaced my Windows 10 phones, my Lumia 950 and 950 XL, but this is a lower budget Microsoft Windows phone that I have in the shop, and or in my office. Sorry, my mind's in the other place, but bear with me. So anyway, so one of the key features with Windows 10, right? It was supposed to run across all kinds of devices. Devices like this Microsoft HoloLens, devices like laptops, cell phones, tablets, everything. It was supposed to be everywhere. They had VR integrated into Windows 10, all these different elements, and that was supposed to be the future of, computing on Windows, AR, VR, and mobile experiences. They even have this right here. This is the Microsoft Continuum dock, and what it does is you could plug in a Lumia 950 or a Lumia 950 XL into this dock, and it's got DVI, HDMI out. It's got three USB ports and also a USB-C port out, as well as USB-C charging. Now, what that port allowed you to do, it was called Continuum. You can plug it into a TV and you can basically put your Windows device on a TV or some kind of monitor. And so if you couple that with, like, say something like a Bluetooth keyboard and a Bluetooth mouse, and you could have like a full computer experience. So my understanding from what Microsoft was speaking about with Windows 10 was essentially like the same type of operating system everywhere. Now, I must confess, at that time, I didn't understand everything about x86 versus ARM architecture. The Surface RT was ARM architecture, right? Whereas, like their Intel-based devices was x86. And so you had these two competing platforms. Like most businesses that run Microsoft, they ran the x86 platform. Most desktops, they ran the x86 platform. Microsoft was trying to kind of bridge into the ARM processor area before, M1 Max and such, through the Surface RT. And then they also toyed around with the idea, I believe at that time, because there used to be a couple phones I know that had an Intel chip inside of a smartphone. Now, the issues with an Intel chip being inside of a smartphone, it was the fact the battery life wasn't good, the performance was not up to par with ARM. It just was not a compatible and comparable situation. I believe that Microsoft back then was kind of trying to pair up with Intel to come up with a solution that I think, this is my perspective, that tried to circumvent ARM. Of course, we know today that ARM actually won that battle, and now everybody is going down the pathway of ARM, and ARM is now showing up in devices like this M1 MacBook. So you've got, going back to, you've got Continuum, right? And this is me as a consumer, how I was looking at it. I told you before, I love my experience that I had with the Apple iPhone, with the iBook, being able to sync my music, being able to sync my videos, being able to sync, all of these different things across my devices and in the cloud. And I was expecting that experience with the Lumia 920, which was running Windows 8. It didn't happen, but then we moved forward to Windows 10, which introduced the Lumia 950 and the Lumia 950 XL. I remember way back then, people were really expecting like a Surface phone. That's what we were looking for, but it didn't come. And but they did have Continuum. They did have some very cool tech, because I did use Continuum. I haven't plugged it in a while to see if it still functions, but this is my mindset. Imagine buying one application, whether it be Word, whether it be, back then they had Microsoft Groove, which was their music, kind of something similar to Spotify, or any kind of movie app or any program. And imagine buying that application one time and being able to run it on your smartphone, being able to run it on your Surface Pro, being able to run it on your desktop, being able to run it on your HoloLens, being able to use it in VR. This was the experience that I thought was going to happen. When they started developing Windows 10, I signed up to be a Windows Insider. And so I got to see a lot of the builds. I got to see some of the builds that actually came on the Windows Phone as well. They used to have these experimental features that included Xbox controller support on a phone. The reason for the significance of this is because I want you to kind of, let's look at the dates here. So as I said before, Windows 10 was released in 2015. Why is that key? Imagine, so there was a phone that came out. Let me see if I can find the actual phone. The Lumia 1520. It was a 6-inch screen device that ran Windows 8 at the time. So the live tile type of interface. Now remember, Microsoft is a software company, so they can update software and update things and, progress something from one state to another. And, that's what software companies have the ability to do. So in 2013, they released the Lumia 1520. Why is that significant? It was a 6-inch screen smartphone, just like the big phones that we have today. Now, I believe it had a 20 megapixel camera, which was a downgrade from the camera that came before it. I believe is the Lumia 1010. I remember it being yellow in color, and that thing had something like a 50 megapixel camera on it or whatever. Of course, we know they play with numbers, but that's what it was. It was like the most camera-fied smartphone that was ever made at that time. So you go from the Lumia 920. The Lumia 920 to the Lumia 1010, which is more camera-centric, and then moving on to the 1520, which was a big screen phone. So in my mind, when I see in the logs and in the builds on the background that basically there is information about being able to use a Xbox controller with a 6-inch screen phone, and my mind just started running, and I'm like, I wonder what would happen if you just cut this controller down the middle and paste a 6-inch screen in between it. What do you have? This is where this is key. Remember, I'm saying this is what I think Microsoft would have did and what I thought they were going to do. And I'm going to offer a little bit more information as to why I thought that. But nobody obviously at Microsoft thought this thing. Now, if we come back, remember I said, matter of fact, I just bought that Sony Portal. So imagine that. That's essentially what I'm thinking about. So 2013, they had a 6-inch phone. In 2013, they had Windows Phone. They had their own operating system, their own stack from top to bottom. In 2013, they had an Xbox. They had a gaming catalog. They have, Windows over here. They had Windows Phone over there. They have Xbox over here. They have Surface over here. They had all of these things, all of these, basically irons in the fire. But for whatever reason, it never came together. What do I mean? Let's go. What happened in 2017, March 3rd, 2017? The Nintendo Switch came out. Now you help me to understand something. The Nintendo Switch was built on an ARM architecture. It had 2 Joy-Cons that pop off the sides and a tablet in the middle that's 6.2 inches. That's 0.2 inches larger than the Lumia 1520 that was created in 2013. Microsoft is not only a software company for business, but it was also a gaming company. It created Halo. It created, all these different games under their studios, right? And I'm thinking to myself, wouldn't it be amazing if I could take my Windows phone with my USB-C port and plug it in to my continuum dock and play Halo or play whatever games, like, remember, if you look now, we have 1 terabyte on a phone, right? That didn't exist back then. But if you go back and imagine this, right? Try to stick with me, because I get a little bit excited when I talk about these topics. Imagine if Microsoft thought differently, right? I don't want to say they're dumb or nothing like that. There's a lot more smarter people over there than me. But I just felt like if in one aspect you have a Windows phone, top to bottom, that you own, you're not subservient to Android, you're not subservient to Apple, right? You have a phone, you have a gaming console, you have the market of business, like 90-something% of businesses run Windows. You've got tablets in the Surface, you've got holographic devices, all of these things. And you even toy around in the background with basically adding Xbox controller support to a phone. And yet you get all the way to the edge and you do nothing with it. You let it all slip through your hands. Let me tell you what it could have been like. Well, let me give you some examples of what I thought it was going to be, right? I have to be honest. I made money from investing in Microsoft in the stock market because Microsoft was one of my favorite companies back then. For whatever reason, it was a company that I liked. Now that I'm older and I see things a little bit different, I kind of look at it as like a fan, like a sports team. So I don't feel quite the same way. But the thing is, imagine one application, whatever it may be, and you could use that application on your phone. You could use that application on your HoloLens. You could use it wherever you want to be. I envision Microsoft being in a place where we could have had some kind of Joy-Con device that went on the side that was an Xbox controller that we see in the PlayStation Portal way back then in 2013. They had everything all the way up to 2015 when they came out with Windows 10, right? That's 2 years before the Switch came out. And yet nobody in Microsoft was able to see that. Why would you play around with Xbox controller support on Windows Phone and never see it all the way through? I mean, and like my argument was this, like when you go back and look at games that were on 360, and I'm thinking more so about games like Fallout 3, maybe, those are games that are near and dear to me. Oblivion, different, titles like that. These games in size were about, I'm talking for back then, because remember Xbox was a lower resolution. So maybe 10 gigabytes, 15, 20 gigabytes for the whole game. I know they came out with this Game Pass thing and streaming. No. What I was thinking is, imagine if you had a phone that had 500, I know we got 1 terabyte today, but had 500 gigabytes worth of storage, right? Like, okay, sorry, let me calm down. Imagine I'm Microsoft and I'm in charge. This is what I would have done if I was in charge. Number one, I would have saw that I have computers and I have the workforce on lockdown at 90-something% business. Number two, I would have saw that we were in a distant third place with the Windows Phone. Number three, I would have saw that I have Xbox. What I would have done, especially if you see the idea of trying to pair an Xbox controller to a phone, I would have doubled down on my offering. I would have basically considered the fact that people that work also sometimes want to play, right? And let me go back a little bit further so I can explain exactly what I mean, the logic or my thought process. This right here is the Apple this is the Apple iPhone G2 3G. I bought an original Apple Shuffle. That was like probably one of my first Apple products. It was about as small as a pack of Big Red gum, the little 5-stick packs, right? That thing held 100 songs. Now, at one point in time, Apple was in the position where they could have gone bankrupt and gone under. My understanding, if I have history right, is even Microsoft like put money into Apple to help them. I may have that wrong, but I think that that was something that occurred. But they rode an Apple shuffle, and they came out with a better version, and then a better version, one with the screen, and eventually it gave birth to this phone. Right? They came from basically near death as a company to being what they are today. Now, I don't understand how a company like Microsoft, which had such a powerful hold on the business market, but also had an iron in the fire with gaming, and then also had their own phone and mobile device, albeit they slipped up by the way that they deployed it and maybe trying to charge for licensing. Maybe that messed up their thing because Android gave their operating system away free, and so did Apple. But I'm just surprised that nobody could think of combining Microsoft with gaming. Now we see them trying to do it, but I think it's totally backwards and ridiculous the way that they're doing it today. Because to me, they had everything to do this. They would have never had to buy something like spend 70 billion on Call of Duty and that company. They would have never had to do that. Because the reality is, if you own the full stack, if you own the PC, you own Windows, and then you own the operating system, and you continue to innovate and figure out how to make your phone operating system integrate and talk to your PC, and then double that down to talk to your Xbox, so that it's an integrated environment. You see, the proof of the matter is, I'm sure back then Windows was thinking, now of course you can see that I was a Windows fanboy because of the enthusiasm that I'm displaying here, but the thing is this: Nintendo proved that people would carry more than one device. Microsoft just didn't have the vision nor the confidence to test that theory. They were so focused on the fact that we're in third place by a distant mile as far as not being able to get market share. Apple with a music player took over the market, and Microsoft could have done the same thing with gaming by combining what they already had and the market share that they already had with gaming. They could have been the Switch before the Switch, to be quite honest. And not much would have been able to compete. And it's so funny because I feel like they're going backwards to try to get to that same point. So now we're talking about, they've totally, they basically failed an Xbox. And they're talking about an Xbox handheld. And in my opinion, they're doing this all wrong, because at the end of the day, Microsoft doesn't own the internet. They don't own streaming. And as long as you have to stream something, whether it be to a Fire Stick or a handheld or whatever, as long as you have to stream stuff, you get to pay a third party. When they had the phone, when they had the software, when they had the PC, they could have created first party games, right? Mobile and or bigger AAA, and they could have made those things work on their hardware, optimized for their hardware. They had the opportunity to strike when the fire was hot, but they didn't have the vision. They didn't have the vision. They did not have the vision, and they missed royally. And you see it in so many different products. This product failed. I envision myself being able to go to, like, say, a Starbucks cafe with this on my head and be playing a 110-inch screen of Halo out in public with my Xbox controller. That's what I thought that Windows 10 would bring about. But for whatever reason, they just did not have that creative brain trust in their organization to help them to be able to see. And now it just seems kind of weird that you have such a big software company buying $70 billion gaming companies, right? Or spending 70, whatever it was that they spent, $70 billion for a gaming company for what? Right? I mean, of course, you can, siphon off data through AI as far as, because, I believe games now have kind of progressed to being more of a psychological analysis tool. So like when you log in, you have to have a data, and the same way that when you go to the grocery store and you get it like a a grocery store card where basically you get discounts if you have that card, and what they're doing is tracking everything that you buy and creating a profile on you. Now this has kind of gone into gaming, in my opinion, right? I don't think gaming is quite as innocent as it used to be. I think it's an AI training tool, to be quite frank. That's just my opinion. But let me take my tinfoil hat off. But the thing of the matter is, right, because of the colossal failure of Microsoft, I spent $3,500 on this right here, this Microsoft HoloLens. I paid for a $3,500 Surface Book 2, of which is pretty all but abandoned. And, product after product, the Cortana Harman Kardon speaker that is, Cortana's been killed. The Microsoft Cortana headphones and the earbuds and all these things. Microsoft clearly is not a hardware company. They're a software company at heart. And I feel like even with software, they may have kind of lost their way. Because even my experience on, the reason why I'm back on Mac right now, which of course this is looking like a shaky ground as well as far as that, is because I see Microsoft trying to take plays out of Apple's playbook in, moving us to a new world. The PC used to be a thing where basically you would constantly be able to upgrade your computer, and or you could ride it out, and you may have slower performance. But with this whole thing about making everybody switch over to the newer chips because of allegedly security, right? It just, it was like for the first time they pulled an Apple move. Apple does that all the time. Apple updates their products to where you have to keep jumping forward. But in my opinion, if I had to gamble and say who would I trust, I would trust Apple before Microsoft. Not because I have anything personal against Microsoft, but more so because I feel like Apple has more experience playing that game. I feel like Windows is playing catch up with this whole update, drilling you with all these different updates, because they're trying to, basically drive the consumer in a particular direction that is favorable and profitable for them. All these companies now, AI, all this nonsense about that. But the thing is, you see, I had a workflow on my PC before I went back to the M1 Mac, or before I went back to Apple, which led to the M1 Mac. And that workflow, well, first and foremost, I was very disappointed because, of course, Microsoft killed Windows Phone, which totally destroyed my fantasy of basically being in one ecosystem totally and completely. Because if you think about it, when you look at, Apple as a company, yes, they came out with the Vision Pro this past year, which is kind of like an augmented reality device that seems to have flopped just like the Microsoft HoloLens. The reality of the matter is, if you wanted, as I spoke in the last video, if I wanted to do HD when I had my iBook back in the day, I had to switch to Windows. And likewise, if you want to do VR, if you want to do some powerful programs and stuff like that that may not be supported on Mac, you have to go back to PC. And so that is what drove me to the PC. But now that it seems like the structure and the dynamic of the PC, the way that it functions and it operates, the forced updates and the changing of the system in the background has made it a very unstable environment for me. And I see it personally because I wouldn't say I'm the most power user, but I'm a person that will push his computer to the limits. I have a 32 core Threadripper 2990W whatever workstation PC, and my plan with that PC was to use it for VR, to use it for gaming when I wanted to use it for VR, or for video editing and everything in between. And yet, because of updates that Microsoft had provided, because of course the PC essentially was dying, right? Because if they would have evolved their smartphone, as I was saying before, if they would have basically kind of doubled down on what they owned, instead of reaching out and looking at somebody else, Apple did it with music. They did with music. Microsoft could have done it with gaming. If they would have done that, They would have their full platform. They could have transitioned to more of an ARM-based system that people could have integrated to, and they would have had a larger audience. They would have had a huge portion of the audience that is now like on a Nintendo Switch. They would have had that if they had those types of visionary employees in their company. Obviously, they didn't. And so now you've got a dead iPhone, a dead Windows phone, which, it doesn't even make sense for them to go back to that, because it's like, you had it all. You bought Nokia, all these things, and you just, and I feel like that's what they're doing with Xbox right now. It's like a slowly sinking ship, it is what it is, but the bottom line is I feel like, Microsoft missed the boat. They could have brought together their business division, their gaming division, but not like they did it now. The way that they're doing it now, I feel like is very disjointed. It's very unnatural. It's not as intuitive as if they would have controlled the whole stack. If they would have based everything and made their Windows Phone the center of it all, I think they really could have done something. I think they would have been better positioned for the future, because they would have had both the business customer, because they could have continued to innovate on that. And I think it's quite embarrassing to have businesses that have Windows PCs top to bottom and their employees are issued iPhones. That's a slap in the face. That is a massive failure. That is a massive failure. That was an opportunity. That was a market to be had. And Microsoft fumbled that bag so tough. And they couldn't even see how their other business, and you got this right here. This iPhone 3G, it started with the friggin' iPod Shuffle, a music player. And all they did was double down on that. They made their own first-party video editing app, their own first-party music app, their own first-party, all of their stuff was first-party. Microsoft just makes the overall system. They've never reached out to make their own video app. They've never reached out to make their own, the things that would actually provide more value. And maybe that's because they didn't want to kill, their competition, because they have all these other people. It's kind of like, you made Surface, even though HP and Dell and all these people make, Windows PCs. You didn't do that for your own software, right? You didn't continue to innovate and bring in different customers through creating good first-party open box software. And the stuff that you did have, you just got rid of it. Soon after I bought my HoloLens, you guys canceled. They canceled the Groove app and several other applications. The OneNote never functioned properly on the HoloLens, and now this is like a $3,500 paperweight. It's disappointing to see how much money in R&D can go into something for it to basically just go to the to the junkyard, to the salvage heap. Anyways, guys, so this has been the second episode of Telly Talks Tech. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in my next one. Take care.